Silence is the true Upadesha. It is the perfect Upadesha. It is suited only for the most advanced seeker. The others are unable to draw full inspiration from it. Therefore, they require words to explain the truth. But truth is beyond words. It does not warrant explanation. All that is possible is to indicate it. These are the words of Sri Ramana Maharshi, who was a great Indian saint considered to be a Jivan Mukta or liberated being. Namaskar. Welcome to Pradipta's Musings. I am Pradipta Chaudhuri, an initiated lay devotee of Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission. Today I am reading out an excerpt from the book Swami Tapasyananda as We Knew Him, which is about reminiscences of Swami Tapasyananda Maharaj by monastics and lay devotees. Swami Tapasyananda was a very senior monk of the Ramakrishna order who was initiated by Swami Shivananda, a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansa. Swami Tapasyananda Maharaj served the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission as a vice president of the order. He was an erudite scholarly monk who had served as the president of Ramakrishna Mutt, Chennai. The article which I am reading out today has been authored by Swami Tapasyananda Maharaj himself. This article was published in The Mountain Path, October 1982, page 266 to 268. A visit to the Maharshi. The following article appeared as an appendix in the first edition 1937 of Mahayoga, in which it was prefaced by the remark, "The following passages are extracts from a letter written by a critically minded visitor, which once appeared in the Vedanta Kesari, Mylapore, Madras." The Maharshi impressed me as a rare type of man. I do not know whether he is a Jnani or what he is, for as the Vedanta says, a Jnani can be known only by a Jnani, and I am certainly not one. But this person, anyone can feel, is not of the ordinary run of men. We nowadays come across men everywhere whose one thought is world reform and things of that kind. But here is a man who is perfectly aware, as one can see from his conduct and movements, who has no such idea, who has in his opinion nothing to add to the sum total of human happiness. He simply seems to exist without waiting for anything, without being anxious about anything. On watching him, I was powerfully reminded of the Gita passage beginning with Udasinavad, like one that is unconcerned. He seems to take, as far as I can see, no interest even in the ashram that has sprung up around him. He simply sits there. Things are going on as events and other men shape them. The only activity of the ashram in which he seems to take active interest is cooking. He cuts vegetables in the kitchen, and if there is any special cooking any day, he is sure to try his hand at preparing some of the dishes for that day. Spicing and other processes of the culinary art are performed there under his directions. Another point that struck me is his silence. We used to ask in fun among ourselves why eminent professors who crossed the seas did not deliver their Vedantic lectures through silence. But here is a person who actually does this as far as his teaching of the Vedanta is concerned. When I asked him to tell me something of spirituality, the first thing he said was that silence is the highest teaching. The beauty of the man is that he remains faithful to that idea to the utmost extent possible. His idea is that the Advaitin has no position to state, no Siddhanta to propound. He regrets that in these days even Advaita has become a Siddhanta, whereas it is really not meant to be so. The reason for the existence of so much Vedantic literature is this. When doubts arise in the mind, as our intellects are quickened, such literature is helpful in dispelling them. In other words, the Advaitin speaks only to dispel a doubt that might have arisen in himself or in another. Our saint remains faithful to this idea. He is mostly silent and speaks but a little if questioned on any point. Of course, he jokes and speaks occasionally on other things, but he has no dogmatic teaching on Vedanta to deliver. He told me he says yes, yes to everyone who interprets Advaita, even to some of his followers who interpret his ideas in the book published under his name. When I asked regarding a book that I purchased in the depot there, how far the ideas stated therein were his teachings, he said that it was very difficult to say that, as he had no definite teaching. As people have understood, they have written, and they may be right from certain points of view. He himself, he says, has absolutely no idea or inclination to write a book, but due to the entreaties of some people about him, he has written some verses, and he adds that he is often troubled by men who take a fancy to translate them into this language and that, and ask him about the faithfulness of the translation. So, mostly the Maharshi remains silent, and people come, make prostrations, sit before him for some minutes or hours, and then go away, perhaps without exchanging even a single word. I have got my own doubts as to whether people benefit by this teaching through silence. But yet people come from long distances to hear this dumb eloquence and go back satisfied. Though he speaks but little, it is very instructive to watch his face and eyes. There is nothing very prepossessing about his personality, but there is a beam of intelligence and unruffled calmness in his eyes that are unique. His body is almost motionless except when he occasionally changes his position or wipes his sweat in that hot place. I was carefully observing his face. I found him seldom winking and never yawning. I say this to show that I am sufficiently satisfied that the absence of activity in him is not due to inertness. The third point that struck me was the absolute absence of vanity or self-importance in him. Except for his dress confined only to a kaupinam, a visitor may not find it possible to make out Ramana Maharshi. He eats the same food as everyone else there. There is not even a single extra item or special dish for him. I specially noticed that in conversation he is not averse to using the first personal pronoun, unlike some other Vedantins who use he and things of that kind. I point out this to show how unostentatious he is. His silence, I am convinced, is not to assume a gravity of disposition calculated to keep people at a distance. And when he breaks that silence, as he does when questioned, he appears to be the sweetest and most friendly of men. He makes no distinction between man and man for their wealth or position in society. I saw peasants and gentlemen in motor cars coming and being greeted with the same silence. They all sit on the floor and receive the same hospitality. In fact, the Maharshi seems to be quite indifferent to any financial gain that the ashram may have by special treatment given to rich men. I stayed in the ashram for 3 days. The Maharshi talked with me very kindly and quite freely on the several questions I asked him. Although his manner of replying was not so impressive as I expected, his thoughts are always clear, concise, and free from all ideas of narrowness. Though he has not read much, as he himself told me in some context, he has a good grasp of all the difficult points in Vedanta. My impression is this: whether he is a Jnani or anything else, I do not positively know, but I am convinced that He is a sweet and lovable person who is indifferent to all things about him, who has no end of his own to gain, who is always alert even when he seems to be most deeply absorbed, and who may be said to be perfectly free from greed and vanity. In seeing him, I do believe I have seen a unique personage.